Ladies and gentlemen, I am your host, Double Tap, and this is Aussie Game Rants. This week, we get political. Of course, as always, I'm joined by my partners in crime. Shogsy23, say hey.
How's it going?
And Jimmy D, give him a shout out. Another great shout out by Jimmy D. So this week we're talking a little bit about the political landscape in Australia. Now don't click away, it's not going to be boring, it's games related. We're talking classifications, we're talking R18, we're talking the shitfest that it really is.
Yeah, this one really gets my jimmies rustled.
It's a bit messy really, isn't it?
Oh, man, how angry this makes me.
Well, look, alright, so prior to 2013, Australia, for anyone who's not in Australia, anyone who didn't know, Australia didn't have an R18 classification for games, as such. And because of that, the highest rating was MA15 plus, I believe, for games. In saying that, that would mean a lot of games would turn down classification.
A lot of good games too, a lot of
Quality.
AAA titles. A lot of titles that had to be altered just to enter Australia. We were on par with Germany, and Germany has some pretty strict classification rules.
A lot of articles do compare us to Germany for our conservatism, even now with an R18 classification, which we'll get to in a little bit. But prior to the introduction of the system, the biggest claim really was that these AAA developers were getting their games turned away, or they had to specifically alter it, which then again, as I'm sure anyone who's an Australian gamer out there is aware, that prices jump up in Australia. No wonder why. I mean, they have to alter the game specifically to enter it in. I know if I was a developer and I wasn't going to make any kind of profit or even a small profit, I wouldn't bother touching Australia as a market. Now, one of the big games that always comes under scrutiny when it comes to classifications is
GTA.
Which is a very interesting game with a lot of different themes. Now, Shogsy, you're currently playing Grand Theft Auto 5 again for the second or third time.
Yep, run through it again.
Yeah, can you tell us some of the things in that game that might pique the interest of a classification?
Yeah, that are risque to say.
Biggest thing would obviously be the prostitutes. In the original Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3 release, you had hookers that you could just pull over to the side of the road, honk your horn, and they'd jump right in your car, take them somewhere else, and get the car a bit shaky. And when they upgraded to the PC, PS4, and Xbox One version, you actually had a first-person view, so you actually had a much more intimate idea of what was going on.
Now, that would be the act of fellatio, correct?
And sex itself, yes.
Okay, so intercourse and fellatio, etc. Now, refresh my memory here. I've played quite a few entries in the Grand Theft Auto series, but there was one that was released in Australia for a very small period of time with this kind of content in it, and it was immediately pulled from the shelves.
That would be San Andreas, the original release. The original release, when it first got released in Australia, it was like a worldwide release, one of the first of its kind when it first came here.
Very novel for Australia.
Basically, it had a thing called what people now call the hot coffee mod.
It was actually GTA 3.
5. San Andreas had the hot coffee
3
mod.
first, and then San Andreas.
3 was in such a big controversy because it went from 2D to 3D. And because there was so much more graphical power and what you could see, that's where the controversy first originated, and that's where Rockstar became so famous for its in-your-face kind of attitude towards
which is Grand Theft Auto to a tick.
San Andreas is the one that got pulled and then put back on with the cut content.
Right.
It was called the hot coffee mod. Basically, that one showed full frontal sexual intercourse, which they did not know about because you had to get to a certain point within a relationship on that game.
With the hot coffee mod on GTA 3, they also had they had to lock it to rear view only.
Yeah, so basically what happened, GTA 3 was the first one to do it, where they actually turned it around.
And you could originally look all the way around, and all of a sudden they were oh my god, you can actually see what the fuck's going on there.
Yeah, San Andreas actually did the all the way around. They were the first ones to unlock it.
Yeah.
they call it a mod now because originally when it was pulled and then put back on, only PC could access it. It's still to this point only PC can access it. If you were lucky enough during the original releases, I think it was only on the shelf for about a week before it got pulled and then put back on.
Period of time, yep.
If you were lucky enough, you actually got a PS2 or a
Shoxy, did you
Xbox.
get your hands on that copy? No.
No, I had the
I
post.
was the one who had a
You
hot
got
copy.
your hands, okay.
Hot copy,
I believe my uncle back then, because I was a little bit too young, I believe, to be playing those games. My uncle had a copy as well and passed that down to me a few years later. But yeah, that was an interesting period of time for the GTA series and part of what's really established them as a controversial series.
Yeah, so, right, I mean, Rockstar's very well known for pushing the boundaries with classification boards, not only in Australia, but worldwide. Not so much now, because of what we view as normal.
Yep.
That just comes down to years and years of viewing on the internet and stuff like that.
Being desensitized to a certain
Yeah,
extent.
that's the word I was looking for, desensitized to basically all of this kind of stuff. But they still find a way to push the boundaries, in this case with GTA 5's first-person mode.
Yep. And we'll see that a lot through the chronology of the classification sphere in Australia. But would it surprise you guys to learn that Grand Theft Auto 5 wasn't asked to be censored by the classification board?
At all.
At all.
GTA 5.
Correct. In an article from Tech Geek in 2014 discussing these changes, the reporter states that Mortal Kombat was allowed to come into Australia, but Grand Theft Auto 5 wasn't asked to be censored by the classification board. Yeah, it's a stumping little fact. Then, the author goes on to state the even more incredulous fact here. Fable Anniversary received a rating over a minor issue. An R18 rating. Fable Anniversary. Now that...
Do we know what that
what was the
minor
issue?
was?
So, the article goes on to state, the game was a HD remaster of the first title in the Fable series, compiling its expansion as well, known as the Lost Chapters. The original game was rated MA. I don't know if either of you guys played it.
I've got the Lost Chapters. I'm pretty sure it was rated M with fantasy violence. I think that's what they put it down as.
Yep, and with this recent re-release, or somewhat recent re-release, the game was given an R18 rating for sexual activity related to incentives and rewards. Now, this was based on the brothel in Darkwood Bordello, where players could be rewarded for pairing up with a certain number of prostitutes as a man, or receive 1,000 gold for having sex with a male NPC dressed as a woman. Now, I mean, from what I've heard, I haven't actually played the Fable series again. From what I've heard, that's actually fairly commonplace, isn't it?
Yeah.
In Fable. And none of the series had been given an R18 before. It seems, on that one, yes, it's a questionable one. That's what the title of these games have been given, is questionable R18 ratings. It seems that it's more than questionable, it's almost deliberate. They've introduced an R18 system to escalate what that content is instead of giving it to a 15-year-old.
Yeah. Might want to also add, with Fable, with their hooking up or their sexual contact with characters, you do not see anything. Even throughout the whole series, you know what's going on.
Yeah.
All that stuff. But nothing is seen, nothing is shown.
It's all behind the
nothing like that.
scenes.
Yeah, it's all behind the scenes. Most of the time, it's pretty much just you sitting there going, hey, 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 hey. And that's literally it. And that's classed as you hooking up with someone. They fall in love with you, that's it. And that's basically been throughout the whole Fable series. Even Fable 3 kind of had sexual things in it.
Yeah.
But it cuts to this thing where people get married and they, have a baby and all that stuff, and they make it not sexualized. It's not a sexualized content, which
the romantic side of it
really
more than
baffles me that's the reason why that got an R18 rating.
Could you say that there is an argument against that, though, in saying that is sexual content, being that a male is degrading a female by wolf whistling at her and proliferating the sex industry?
Yeah, but then you're going far right wing. That's like basically,
Is
there.
it too safe parenting, could you say?
Yeah, that's like that saying, that one where they turn around and said that women need to dress conservative because they're like pieces of meat. I can't remember which one said it, but there was a certain well-known person who actually said something along the lines of, women who dress up like that are asking for it. It's not actually asking for it. That's the way you view it. I mean, sure, there's going to be people who will perceive it as that kind of thing.
It's all perception.
Majority of people will not see it like that. I mean, if you look at the content and you actually see these kind of scenes, but if you actually look at these kind of scenes, there is nothing sexualized about that kind of act in these things. They actually make it more of a family-orientated thing. Yes, it's an adult game, it's got some violence, but it is very fantasy-orientated. It doesn't show so much violence as, say, Skyrim or anything like that.
BloodBorne.
Or BloodBorne, or any of the, your fantasies of today. Witcher 3 has far more sexualized stuff in it than what Fable does. Yet
the unicorn scene.
They both received an R18 rating. Now, Witcher 3 I can understand.
Yeah.
Because there is a far more
obvious sexual
content.
I mean, you have intercourse with people.
Disney's got sexual content in it. If you watch some of the Disney shows and stuff as an adult, you go back and watch a Disney movie, you'll pick up on a lot of dirty jokes that you never knew of as a child.
Lion King's a great example.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying. So, a person who's playing this is going to see it. The way they perceive it is a different story.
This is true. Now, obviously, we've shifted our view a little bit into the current, what we will call the current system in Australia, being the R18 classifications. The old system, very outdated, we all know it, MA15+, caused a lot of issues with developers and people wanting to get the content. Obviously, one of the options, if you couldn't get the content legally, was to pirate it. We still have that kind of issue now with the R18, but we're clearly moving into the sphere of more adult gaming.
And that's where, a lot of problems with Australia's gaming industry is the fact that because so many things are getting cut because of these classifications, piracy is one of the highest in the world.
Yeah.
When you come down to percentage of people versus, how much is being pirated, we are one of the highest countries in the world to pirate things, and that's purely come down to the thing where, I can't get that content, I'll go somewhere else and grab it.
Exactly right. You have no other choice.
Yeah.
Now, in saying that, I did read the Australian Law Report Committee, so yes, I have done a little bit of work here, guys.
He's a good boy.
This law report was published, I believe, in 2012. It was on before the change, and in that it stated that the new laws that were proposed, new system that was proposed, all these kind of things, should represent Australian values. Now, later in the piece we will talk a little bit more about this, but I do want to bring to the attention of the audience and to you here that an author from Macquarie University, known as Professor Catherine Lumbia, but she stated in an article, and I find this incredibly apt for this, in this era, any parent who thinks that government alone will protect their children from inappropriate content is dreaming. If I have ever heard a truer statement, I would be shocked. That is the most appropriate statement for this day and age. We are looking at an age where technology is so fastly growing and so burgeoning.
So easy to get your hands on and everything. You don't have to be a 3-year-old and you can still get contact with it. So.
Exactly right. I mean, I was talking to one of my good mates the other day about him playing PlayStation with his 3-year-old who can control it well and compete very well and is very adept at using technology. Clearly, the regulations are not representing the Australian public, especially the gaming public. I think it's very obvious to see that there's a miscommunication between the current sphere and the public opinion.
I've played both extremes on Fable 2.
Yeah.
Played right through. And, my good character, great and light nature and everything. I played through on the evil character. And the world is just dark. And it's just it feels like a horrible place to be. And there's more obvious sexual content.
That's the same as playing Fable 3, man. I mean, if you play Fable 3 on the dark side, you totally fuck things up.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the world's a very different place to be.
I mean, I suppose that really bears a striking similarity to the caveat that you get when you go online. The rating isn't representative of online gameplay.
How do you rate online gameplay?
You can't. I mean, it's in that kind of area where if you're
going to be doing that, you might as well just basically every single online game should be rated R.
Or do what Nintendo does and don't have voice chat in anything. which to me is a damn shame, especially with games like Splatoon and Mario Kart,
But then-
where I would love to have a conversation.
But then you've got like Star Fox, the 3DS one. When you die, shows a reaction photo of your face.
Really?
If someone's smart enough, they'll just go, done. There's our 18 rating. They can just show a picture of their dick to some 3-year-old.
Yeah, which, I mean, that's the thing. We get into the whole internet age, and you look at how hard it is to actually classify things.
How hard it is to do that, and how easy it is for someone for you to have an R18 game out of a simple, what could be very innocent.
Yeah. Essentially innocent content, as far as we would consider. And I mean, I'm sure the youth of today would consider it mostly innocent as well, because I mean, they're growing up with the internet. They're growing up with things like Snapchat. You can't rate. You will never be able to rate Snapchat, because we all know what kind of content can turn up there.
Yeah.
I've heard horror stories about it.
You've got Snapchat, you had the whole Snap leaks and all that stuff that happened where, the
news
cloud
leaked.
content,
Yeah.
everyone's nudes got leaked.
Yeah, we're living in a day and age where it's almost...
you might as well just
privacy's
slap R18
non-existent.
on everything that has online.
Exactly right, yeah.
And
Just
what
to cover your
doesn't these
bases.
days,
So let's talk a little bit more about some other games that have had controversy in the R18 system, one of which is Mortal Kombat, of course. Now, I believe it was Mortal Kombat X to first deal with this system.
Yeah, it was. Interesting fact, Mortal Kombat was the first game in Australia to actually get the rating
The first
system.
one.
So
Okay.
one of the first.
One
Should
of
say
the
one of
first.
the first.
Because
it's one of the most prominent games,
It
well
is
known.
probably the most well known because of all the controversy around it. The actual first one, surprisingly, now this blows my mind, is on a Nintendo console. Anyone want to have a guess?
I read this. I can't remember what it was.
It was Ninja Gaiden 3, Razor's Edge. Fair enough, I can understand Ninja Gaiden.
If anyone's played that, that is like uber gore.
It is really uber gore. But the thing that strikes me as funny is it's on a Nintendo console. The family-friendly console gets the first Australian R18 classification.
Makes no sense.
It's
Well,
It's ironic.
considering that their version of Mortal Kombat changed the blood to green
yes, way back.
and all that stuff back in the original
Yeah.
Mortal
Was that
Kombat.
on the
Yeah.
NES?
Yeah, back on the NES.
Yeah.
They changed their blood
To
from
green.
red to green.
Yeah.
So
it didn't
it's
look like blood.
surprising
Yeah, to
enough that the
dehumanise it.
first one to actually get a classification was a Nintendo console game.
Yeah, it's really interesting. But there you go. So then we get to the other interesting ones, as I said, about Mortal Kombat. Now, Mortal Kombat was refused classification based on, obviously, the brutalities and fatalities, which we've all seen, all know, and all, unfortunately for the Australian Classifications Board, love.
Mm.
Now, you've played Mortal Kombat.
Yes.
Jimmy?
Oh, I love myself some Mortal Kombat. It's one of my probably... Yeah, I would say it's my favourite fighting game.
You haven't really picked up many fighting games, have you,
Not a
Shoxy?
big fighter, no.
Not a big fighter. Look, I've played pretty much any mainline fighter game, but I've never been serious about it. So I am very familiar with Mortal Kombat. I remember running home from school when I was a little kid to play Mortal Kombat on my PlayStation 1. I believe PlayStation 1. Yeah, after school, that was fond memories. And of course, that was an M game, and I was in primary school, early high school. So, I mean, that's one example of people getting their hands on the content that they want, regardless of the classifications.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is like, even if they put these classifications in and stuff like that, you're still going to have the kid go, Mummy, Daddy, get me this game, get me GTA. And
Yep.
But the thing is that these parents who get these games, then the kids play them, and then they see them and all this stuff, are the ones who will blame the government for it.
Well, see, the thinking here goes that the rating system is basically information for a parent who's otherwise uneducated on what the game is. Mummy, Daddy, please buy me Mortal Kombat. Mummy, Daddy goes to the store, looks around, excuse me, sir, where is your latest Mortal of the Kombats, of course, like the Googles. They show them Mortal Kombat and they go, oh, that's R18. I can't buy that for my son.
By the way, have you ever gotten internet protection?
Don't start on internet protection while we're here. Some of my favourite retailers have taken to haggling and trying to get extra money out of me, which I don't enjoy at all. We'll get to that in a later podcast.
Yeah, that one's saved for a very angry podcast.
That will be a very fun rant. Now, there was another very prominent, very Australian joke that was put into a game that was refused classification had to resubmit. What was that game? Do you remember?
If memory serves me correct, this one was South Park Stick of Truth.
Stick of Truth, yeah.
Now, did anyone here play that?
Yeah, I've played both the cut and uncut content.
I've seen the YouTube footage of the cut stuff.
Now, if a game publisher ever gave it to a classifications board, this is how you want to do it. So the original one, what was the content that was cut?
Okay, so I'm pretty sure that in this one, the original content was about a anal probing scene.
Mm-hmm.
Where you controlled the actual anal probing?
Yeah, you control the anal probe, and I think you go into one of the South Park characters' father's butts, and you probe his butt. Typical South Park comedy.
Yeah, I was going to say a true South Park style.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was a kid getting an anal probe by aliens at an interactive abortion scene with wire and a vacuum device, to be very specific.
Yes.
That was the scene. Now, how was this scene replaced in the Australian version?
In the Australian version, which, even though we couldn't get the uncut content, the cut content was actually quite funny. To stick it to the classifications board, the guys who created this game actually just put up a static picture of a koala bear crying, with a really, really detailed description on what's going on in that scene. So they didn't show the scene, but it was full detail if you could read.
Now that is how you stick to classifications board. Now, unfortunately for them, that would have involved, I would imagine, quite a bit of cost, which...
Hours of editing the game.
It's pretty unfathomable to think about a company going down that line to try and release something that they've made, they've cherished, they've tried to be okay with around every classifications, and then they get denied. But that's how you come back in style, I'd say.
No, it was one way to turn around. It was a big FU to the classifications board in Australia, and there was another one for Europe. Europe had a crying statue. With the exact same detailed description. This is the one that was released in Germany. I can't remember what this statue actually was. I'm sure if you search it on YouTube or something like that, you'll be able to find the European censored version, but they specifically, for each country that denied them, had a specific monument or animal.
Something iconic.
Yeah, that basically was crying because it was basically resembling what the rest of the country was thinking when they found out that content was cut.
Yes. So, I mean, that's sadly something we'll never get to play. I don't know whether I should say sadly, because obviously, yes, it is controversial content. Being the interactive abortion scene's probably a little bit...
Look, it's very risky, but at the same time, it's South Park.
Alright, well, that brings me to an interesting conversation point. Now, the idea between games and movie classifications, the difference there... Now, the thinking obviously goes that in a video game, you control usually the protagonist and you will be doing the acts. In a movie, you are merely watching the acts, and that's the thought process behind the difference in classifications. Do you have any thoughts on that?
In this day and age, with how realistic games are looking and, how risque is the best way I can think of it. Movies are getting...
Everything's very lifelike. So.
Everything's lifelike. Everything's getting real. The CGI in movies is unparalleled to what they used to be.
Sometimes you can't tell what's what.
Yeah. If you look at the recent Avengers and stuff like that, you would believe that Ultron was actually sitting there. Games nowadays, you've got games that are basically movies. You've got this genre now of games that are interactive movies. You've got Beyond Two Souls, Heavy Rain, Until Dawn is the newest one.
I think Akuma's Wrath, or I can't remember the quite...
There's another one. I can't remember them. They're the three that I know of.
Yep.
But they've basically created their own genre of an interactive movie.
The big ones, anyway.
So, in saying that, there should be no reason why either or should be denied classification, especially in games. Purely because they're so similar nowadays. Both of them are very, very similar. I mean, yes, you play a game, and you watch a movie. But if you sit there and, for South Park as an example, the South Park Stick of Truth is done exactly the same as the
The
shows
TV
are.
show.
Exactly the same. Like the paper mache characters and everything, they are exactly the same. They walk the exact same. They're voiced by the same characters. It's basically like you're watching an episode.
Mm.
Yeah,
The
they
only thing
cut the
is your
content
hands
on
on the
there,
controller.
and then there was actually an episode that was aired that was based on the Stick of Truth that had similar content in it.
Yep.
That was shown.
Yeah.
And that was rated, I
Because
believe,
it-
MA 15+.
Because
Yeah.
it wasn't interactive.
Exactly.
Yeah, because
was
it wasn't interactive. But even now, with the Blu-rays and all that stuff, there is some kind of level of interactivity with movies.
I mean, you've had that for years, though. You go back to the original releases of DVDs. You had, a little controller on the TV that would go left and right. You could select your menus, play little mini games. You've always had that kind of
Yeah.
interactivity, and you're always going to from here on out.
Yeah.
Now, interestingly, would you be surprised that in saying that, there have been calls for a platform-neutral approach to classification. Now, one of the big places that actually made this call was the Australian Law Report Committee. They came out in their report, I believe, 2012, and stated that one of the options going forward would be a platform-neutral approach, which is what we're talking about.
Which is probably the best option. I'm not surprised that that's become the next level of discussion. Just because, how similar they're basically becoming now. They are basically one and the same. You've got a lot of games that are becoming TV shows, or vice versa. You've got a lot of TV shows that are becoming games.
Mad Max was a good recent one. There were that movie and the game came out roughly at the same time.
Yep, you had that. You've got it's on
Defiance?
Sci-Fi. Defiance. That's the one I was thinking of. Defiance. It actually came out in tandem with the TV show.
Okay.
And they had
and it's still running parallel.
they had
Yep.
competitions in it, whereas the highest ranked player in that game actually got their character shown on the TV show.
Oh wow.
So obviously with a different name, if your name was like XX360 No Scope. But
420.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Or 420 Blazer
420
or something. They're not
Blazer,
going to have Captain 420 Blazer in the corner there. They actually, they would show their character in that set of armor that they got that ranking of at the time. Now you've got this other one. I can't remember the name of Quantum Break.
Which looks amazing.
Is another one of those ones that's going to have a tandem TV show running at the same time.
So we're really going into an age of interactive media. Let's be honest.
Where it's neutral, where
Yep.
we will have to have like a neutral classification. So it does not surprise me that that's where it's going.
On the topic of alternatives,
Join us next week for the rest of this discussion as we delve into solutions and remedies to the classification system in Australia. You may be surprised by our recommendations. Don't forget to like and subscribe and view any of our other videos. You can find us on all major social media networks such as Facebook, Twitter and Instagram at Aussie Game Rants. And stay tuned for more content